One of the things I think that's really hard to measure in an agency is actually employee workload and employee work effort. And so that's where we had almost no insight.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
I'm having a good Monday, Lindsay. How are you?
I'm doing well, but I have a pressing question to ask you. So Morgan, who is my sister, for anyone who's listening and does not know that, just texted me and said that she is sending me a present. Do you know what this present surprise is? Because I'm dying to know, and she won't tell me now.
You know, she's getting much better at keeping secrets, so I actually do not know either. And but she did text me and ask me for your address. So you must be in for a treat today, because she is definitely getting you a surprise and keeping it a surprise for everyone.
That sucks that she keeps surprises now. She used to buy us Christmas presents and then tell us about them before, or she'd give us them weeks in advance. It was awesome. There's never any wait period, no hang time.
It's funny. It's true. It's true. So she's growing up apparently, and she's going to keep you on the edge of your seat. How about that? Well, I am super excited today, Lindsay, because we get to have one of my very favorite agents on. We have Jacob Eisenrich of Weatherby-Eisenrich Insurance Agency out of Texas joining us today. Jacob, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. I think we met a while ago, right? I was trying to think, is it 3 years now?
At least 3 years. I think it was probably at the IIAT event in Texas was where we first met.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I saw you probably a couple times a year for a while. And it seems like yesterday that we met, but it's been a while. So, Jacob, you are one of the most unique people I have ever met in this industry. And it's for a lot of reasons. You and I definitely connect on a lot of things, but your background is one of the most unique things that I've ever heard. For those of you that don't know Jacob, he's a doctor by trade. You're an MD. I don't know exactly what that is. So give us a little bit of your background of what your first career was and how it brought you to insurance.
Yeah, I have not met another person like me yet. It's definitely on the PNC side, and but my transition to insurance was really worthwhile. But before insurance, I was from a very, very young age wanted to be a doctor, take care of patients, things like that. Pursued that from early schoolhood all the way through high school, college. Went into medical school, graduated medical school, started ophthalmology, which for people who are not familiar with the difference between ophthalmology and optometry, ophthalmology is eye surgery, optometry is vision correction and disease management. And got towards the end of my residency and realized the lifestyle and several things ahead of me were not really what I had wanted to pursue for the rest of my career, which is, quite a long time. Didn't want to spend the rest of my life doing that for several reasons. And my family had been in insurance. My father bought an agency before I was born and managed and grew that agency through my entire childhood. So, like many of us in insurance, we had exposure to insurance beforehand. And it was kind of a landing pad for me because when you're doing residency and working like a doctor, you can't just go job search or search for a new career or something like that. So they were growing, they had a need, they needed a different skill set. I had a need and desire to leave healthcare, and the business of insurance is wonderful. It all kind of fit. And so I made the leap out of healthcare and patient care and into insurance almost 8 years ago now. And it's been a great transition since.
What was that transition like? What was it? So what drew you away from the doctor world was the time and the lifestyle. When you came to
Yeah,
insurance.
it was a lot of things actually. So For those who are not familiar with the pathway, you go to medical school, you pick a specialty, you do a residency that can be 3 to 7 years depending on your specialty, and then you go into potentially a fellowship, which is like an advanced residency, and then you go into your practice. And I picked ophthalmology and was at the last part of my residency getting closer to the private practice setting. And so I was going to be a junior partner until my kids were like out of college. So I was going to
Mm.
miss all of those years. There's several things about the business of medicine. That was the primary thing that really kind of drove me out, and that's a whole separate topic altogether. But the business of medicine was an environment that I didn't really want to participate in. So it was leaving healthcare, and it was also pursuing other opportunities. The opportunity for business ownership, which is becoming more challenging in healthcare, the opportunity to build a business and a culture and direct it the way that you feel like it can provide value to customers, employees, a key part of that, employees, and kind of create the work environment that you want to live in. That was a thing that I was pursuing. And then flexibility um, and options, all those kinds of things were part of it. So I was getting hit on both ends in some ways.
How did you settle specifically on insurance? Was there an agency that you found, or what was that like?
Yeah, it was um, there wasn't so much of a choice. It was absolutely a choice, but in a way it wasn't. But it was my choice to leave healthcare. But at that time, you're working on average 80, maybe more hours a week. And then when you take the non-clinical care out of it, you're working way more than 80 hours a week. I had a newborn. My wife was a practicing dentist. There was not this opportunity to just go, what do I want to do and go job interviews, search for those opportunities. So had I not had the family agency to land in, I probably would still be in healthcare in some form or fashion. And so it created the opportunity for me. I was definitely not going to go work for a competitor or anything like that.
Yeah, I think your
And so,
dad would have had something to say about that, right? Yeah.
yeah, I had no desire to for in the first place, but that just would not have made any sense. So that really kind of, it, in a way, it decided it for me, but it was because it was such a good opportunity that was presented to me. Why not take that?
Yeah.
It wasn't a thing of last resort, but it created the opportunity to exit healthcare for me, which was a real positive thing.
Well, I think that it is an incredible industry. And I also think a lot of people don't realize how fabulous it is until they're inside it. Because if you think about it, you joined the medical field to help people. You're just helping people in a completely different way. And in some ways, a more impactful way, because you're protecting their family, you're protecting their businesses, you're an extension of making sure that the things that they build stay sound. So one of the things that really struck me, Jacob, when I first met you is I was speaking about data and the impact of data could have on agencies, I think, when we met. And you were one of the people that spoke my language. Like you absolutely did. And, you kind of lit up. I'll never forget that. But I think that that's something that you've brought to the agency. Tell me what it was like when you came, and am I right that that's something that you brought or that you evolved inside the agency, or was it already there?
I think it's something that I enhanced. I did not
Okay.
start it from scratch because my father is he is a numbers person. He knew, like, here's what my definition of a well-running business is and a well-running agency is. And so he kind of had that tuned, but extracting additional data points was very time consuming. And so contributing to that was really my first thing into getting a better instrument panel or dashboard built for the business. But before I go into that, I want to make a comment real quickly about helping people because you made that comment. When I was in undergrad, my economics textbook, the first page said, economists don't help people in the same way doctors do, but they help a lot more people. A doctor patient relationship is one on one, an economist policy making decision is potentially millions. And we kind of fall in that realm as insurance agents. Some of our help is one on one, and that's what's great. We do get to have that relationship. But at the same time, we can help a lot more people than we can just one on one. And that creates a lot of value. Sometimes it feels intangible compared to helping patients one on one, but we really do. I feel like I can say that having been a medical provider, we help people in a pretty profound way. It may not be viewed or recognized in the same way, but we create a tremendous amount of value. And I think recognizing that is important, and maybe celebrating that in the agency even more than we do would be really worthwhile in recruiting additional people to the industry in all of its different facets. And I think that's a real valuable thing because I definitely feel like I help people now. I don't feel like I left that in my prior career.
I actually couldn't agree more. So there's sometimes on my team that will say things like, listen, we're not curing cancer here. And I say that in a way to say, listen, if you make a mistake, they're all fixable. Like things are fixable. Whereas if someone's life is like hanging in the balance of your hands, it's not a fixable thing. A mistake is far different. So I want my team to stretch and think about things differently. And I think about the agency the same way. Like we become really deep inside our customers and understand their business in order to help protect them. And for me, help them figure out the decisions that they can make and weigh those decisions as a sounding board and all those things. And it's a pretty profound thing to be able to someone to have you allow you to understand them, their family, their business in a way that so it's a privilege. I would agree with you 1,000%. That's how I actually describe my business, the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get the one on one component, but it's not just the one on one component.
I think
Yeah.
it's really interesting
Yeah.
you made that connection of helping people as what drives people to the industry, like what's going to drive people to the industry. Because if I think about why I joined the industry and where I've gone and, my path so far in the industry, it's definitely following helping people, right? So I joined the industry to do some outreach for a program that brings people into the industry and brings them out of job situations that they don't like, totally helping people. The second,
Sounds
yeah, the
familiar.
second thing I worked on, which was really cool, was an insurtech startup called um, 101 Weston Labs, which is really cool. Like it's helping founders of insurtech companies. And now I'm with Indium, which is a network, which networks literally my entire job is just talking to agency owners and helping them and doing cool stuff like that. So I think that's definitely something my generation, if highlighted, would flock to for sure. I love that you pulled that out as something that would drive growth in the industry.
Yep. Sometimes the bad claims experience takes the narrative, and we need to remember, the home was rebuilt, that financial legacy was restored, things like that, and there's a lot of noise that can distract from that narrative. And unfortunately, that noise, is true a lot of times. And we can work on addressing that, but we don't need to let it swallow the narrative that this industry is predicated on helping people through hard times,
No
or that's
doubt.
the whole purpose of its existence. So anyway,
No doubt. Okay,
um,
so let's dive into what does being data driven mean at Weatherby-Eisenrich Insurance? Like what are the things that you focus on?
yep. Um, this the saying "know your numbers." Know the state of your flocks is like an old saying, like very old saying. Know the state of your flock. And that applies to really any business. And so that's where it was coming at originally. And it's the very basic stuff. What's revenue? What's expense? And are we controlling the controllables for that at the very basic level? And then you can get into lots of different metrics. One thing that I was taught in medicine was really interesting because you can take your business and it's kind of like a patient. You can say, I want to run this test to see what the results are. You can do that for your business and figure out, is it healthy? Is it sick? And what do I need to do to fix that? It's the same analogy, but we learned in medicine, never ask a question that you don't know what to do with the answer. So like information for information's sake can be really distracting. A patient may be healthy, but you run a test that you don't need to address the issue, and there's an abnormality there. Well, now you're running down this track of trying to figure out what that is, and it may actually not be a bad thing. It just falls outside the norm for that lab test. And so in the same way, I think going into data for a business, like what are you trying to achieve, defining that right up front will, because you can run so many reports, you can slice and dice the data in so many ways, but if it's not useful or helpful, you're just, wasting a lot of time. And so for us, Lloyd is my father. Lloyd and my parents in the business had already had a pretty good grasp financially of the business, a very good grasp. Like on a weekly basis, they were measuring lots of different financial metrics. Um, but it was more at the agency level. And so getting down to, is this department healthy, was where I started to take it, and defining like what is healthy. In medicine, we have defined lab values for everything. This is healthy. Well, sometimes we don't have those lab values for our agency. And just like if one patient in this demographic in this location of the country is going to have a different lab value than this patient that's of a different nationality or origin is going to have so knowing how to apply the numbers is, I think, really helpful. So defining for us what is healthy in our market with our employees, with our client mix, um, and then determining what that is, determining where we are, and then what can we do to move it towards a healthier route. And I think also providing that information to the team. Hey, we're making this business decision, and it's not arbitrary. It's for this reason, and here's why it impacts the business. A healthy business is a business that'll keep you employed. A healthy business is a business that can pay competitively. A healthy business is a business that provides good, consistent customer satisfaction. That's our pursuit here. Here's the number. Here's where we're going. And that has really helped with like employee, buy-in to the change, not change for change's sake, but really kind of pursuing it that way. Is that kind of
Yeah.
getting at what you were asking about? And I can be more about specific reports and stuff like that if you'd like.
Yeah. Could you give us like a specific example of something you've noticed from those benchmarks in the last year, and then a decision that was made or an action that was taken to get you closer to the benchmark?
One of the things I think that's really hard to measure in an agency is actually employee workload and employee work
Totally.
effort. And so that's where we had almost no insight, and one of the first places you get that information is just talking to your team. How is it right now? What's your workload like? Things like that. Some agency management systems give some metric to that, but you have to know where is that number coming from and why is it that number. Sometimes like work efforts are measured because the system actually did something, not an individual. So some employees may look like they're super high on work efforts, but it's because they're using the system differently. So knowing that, stuff like that. So one of the things is we want to look at what is work ethic, what is a great book of business or work requirement. And what we saw is a lot of strain on the team in terms of how chaotic the work was. Some weeks you have tons of call-ins and walk-ins and a ton of work to do, but you still have the same amount of renewals. And other weeks it's really, really slow. And we were kind of living the whiplash of the business cycles we were in. And that creates a lot of stress. So one of the first questions was, can we avoid that? Um, and we could by, once we had that information, separating the work types to create a capacity for the fluctuations and roles that were steadily based on the known task, like renewals. Like we can look, and every person in our organization that renews has a chart. Here are how many renewal policies I have every month for the next 12 months into the future. And they can see that. They can plan their CE requirements around it. I can do a book rebalancing if necessary. If one person has a peak month that's just unreasonable, well, something's going to give that month. but we can see that and make adjustments as necessary. Um, Things like that. So what we first started doing, we didn't have really good metrics, but we could check the inbox and see, literally just looking at the inbox, how many outbound emails and inbound emails are coming for each person, how many unread emails are there, and how old are they, and things like that. And that ultimately took us into a zero inbox policy that we applied across the board, because now we measure it 2 to 3 times a week, how many emails. And then once the email came out of, I'm sorry, the work came out of the email and was worked exclusively in the agency management system, then I could get a more accurate picture of the work that was occurring through the reporting abilities of the agency management system. But until that happened, you couldn't really see that. And then you had the phone system reports on top of that to try to get a comprehensive picture. And that wasn't a number that's like, oh, we picked out of best practices or out of GPS or anything like that. We just decided to benchmark that within ourselves. Um, some people have higher capacity than other people and adjust as
I think it's important
like
that you
that.
said that, Jacob, because you also have to pick the benchmark that matches the culture that you want to create inside your agencies. So there could be agencies that are handling, 100 more a month, but their level of care to their customer might be different. Their type of customer might be different. The requirements of that customer could be completely different. So benchmarks are only a guide. There's and I love what you say, because I have been saying the exact same thing for a really long time. Data is only valuable if it drives an action. If it's data for data's sake, it literally is confusing, which is why, many agents that come to me and they look at my reports, they don't know what to do with the numbers on the page. And if I can't help them do something with it, they shouldn't be paying attention to it. So I love that you said that. And that's a perfect practical way you can rebalance the account. You can actually think about stratifying the work and utilizing a VA. You could think about using a service center. You could think about doing all kinds of things when you know what that true workload is. And ultimately, what you can expect from your team, what you can expect, what your customers can expect from you. It's an incredibly valuable thing. But if it's a whole bunch of numbers on a page and a dashboard that there's no action, you really did a lot of work for absolutely nothing. That's the reality.
And that's a good point, because once you get that, you have to continually monitor it and address it when it gets off track. If you do this whole project to build that into your team, to report on it or whatever, and then it gets off track and you don't address it, it's kind of all for nothing in a way. And I think that's really where the hardest part is. It's not as time consuming, but you've got to, that number has to truly mean something. And that's the way you make it mean
So
something.
let me ask you this. Agency owners have a lot of different decisions they're going to make. They have decisions about who their ideal customer is. They have, decisions about the staff they want to put in place, the technology they want to use, a niche that they might want to create, like all kinds of relationships that they might want to build. What do you think are the most impactful decisions that have been made inside this agency, either prior to you joining or since you've joined, that has positioned the agency well? Like, what do you think those critical ones are?
Yep, that's a good question. I want to jump like first to people-oriented decisions, because it doesn't. And this is something I had to learn transitioning from healthcare to business. Like in that residency environment, it is extremely performance-driven. Um, at all costs, it is merit-based. It is you don't worry about you worry about the patient, but amongst you and your coworkers, it is a performance merit-based decision, and everything. Moving into business, you can't really operate that way. You've got to work with people. Mary and Lloyd had done a great job of focusing on that before I came in. So it was not always popular, but they invested in, at one point, one-on-one coaching for an hour a month with a coach for every employee. doing things like crucial conversations training for the entire staff, really investing in the person. So I think those decisions are some of the things that set us apart um, from a people investment standpoint. And then after that, actually like putting a um, data or a measurement based decision making process in place and sticking to it. And again, sticking to it, I think was the key thing. I think those things have really set us apart. If you need a speedometer and you're speeding or you're going too slow and you ignore it, you don't need the speedometer. So if you're going to put that speedometer in place, follow it, make it known to everybody, and hold the organization accountable to it. And I think accountability is like a dirty word a lot of times. It scares a lot of us, and it's because of how accountability gets implemented. We have organizational accountability that we all contribute to positively and negatively, and we're not going to make it a harm. Like it's not. We're trying to normalize talking about where we did fall short and why, and it not being a punitive experience
Yeah.
at all,
Yeah.
because none of us are going to hit the mark
Right.
100% of the time. So those kinds of people and data decision making things I think were put in place that really helped
Yeah.
us get where
I
we
mean,
are
people
today.
are your largest asset and they're your most expensive asset. I mean, if you're not going to take care of your people, your agency is going to struggle because it's 100% the biggest asset
Hmm.
inside an agency, no doubt. Right.
Yep. I can't do this by myself. I need everybody that's on
Right.
the team doing it, you know. So, yeah, for
How
sure.
are you tracking the KPIs and the all of this data that you're utilizing?
It's kind of a thing in evolution for us, actually. It started as Excel reports every Monday morning, putting those into the tables and graphs necessary. And it took about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours every Monday
Mhm.
morning. Um, then we started flowing those into Power BI to get the visualizations automatically for us. And then we would flow those onto our internal SharePoint page so that everybody could see them, or the teams that needed to see them could see them. We follow the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System
Mhm.
model, the Traction or Traction Tools model. And so we use a software for our weekly meetings. And there's a metrics component into that. So we take those reports and now put them into that weekly agenda, and it grades everything, it trends everything for us. And so that's our current iteration. All of the agency management systems, I think, are really advancing their own in the dashboards in the system or in the environment. And I know we're on Applied Epic. They are releasing some enhancements to that we have some preview access
Mm.
to. We are not fully utilizing that yet, but I think that's where it will go in the future. Um, but we track certain work activities, and those get put into our weekly scorecard for our is what it's called in the EOS model.
Cool.
So, give me an idea of any other. Are there any other data tools that you're utilizing inside your agency?
We do have access to agency KPI, and that is through a network that we're part of. So it is agency specific, but then it also shows us a lot of information about our network, which has been really valuable. And I think probably the best use of it that we've made is not so much about our business operations internally, but it's been market placement information.
Mhm.
There's a lot of really valuable market placement tools out there, but nothing has been quite as valuable as being able to see what our peer agencies in our markets with our carriers are doing and look at those specific SIC or NAICS codes and seeing who placed it there and being able to just call them, hey, we've got a similar opportunity. Um, who did you contact at that carrier, to get this deal done and be able to do it from that standpoint?
Well,
It
what's
shows us all.
go
Go
ahead. I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I was going to say it shows us a lot of the data that we've already talked about. It doesn't show work effort data by employee, but a lot of the financial and book data, it does a very good job of splitting that out and letting you kind of parse that how you need to. But that market trend has probably been the most valuable thing so far.
So I think in this hard market, I mean, what an incredibly valuable thing to know, if you lose a carrier and, or if you have a risk that you haven't had before and you're not 100% sure, having that resource to be able to go and look on is incredibly valuable. No two ways around that, and saves time and energy. It might also show you like, listen, we know that these 5 carriers all like this risk, but of my peers, the majority of them have placed it with this carrier. Therefore, I'm probably going to start there, save myself a little time and energy rather than, maybe hunting and pecking. I'm not saying that that's the way, but that you never really know until you can actually see what the masses are doing. It's pretty incredible tool that they have built. No two ways around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Jacob, we talked a little bit about how this is an incredible industry and how young people, it's a secret too. Like we kind of keep it secret. I don't know what the heck that's about, but it's done amazing things for my family. It's certainly done amazing things in your family. I think you'd say the same. What advice would you give to someone who's starting out now? Like they're just coming into the industry in the middle of a hard market. What advice would you tell someone?
I would, first off, if you're entering the industry right now, this is, we've all said the word, I think, plenty of times, unprecedented, and we're mostly in Texas. And so certainly in Texas, maybe less so in other markets, but it's an unprecedented market. So know that from the very beginning. It's not always going to be like this. But at the same time, there's tremendous opportunity right now to provide and create value in the marketplace compared to in a super soft market. We're all having to work harder to do what we do. And while that may sound like a bad thing, it really forces us to think differently or to really level up our skill set to achieve what we need to achieve. And so learn as much as you can. I would say don't undervalue the importance of mastering your craft. We are knowledge workers, and mastering that knowledge, I think, is a huge thing to reducing the friction in the industry and to providing a great customer service. And it really is the value as an independent agent that we're providing to our customers to be able to explain succinctly and clearly what they may or may not need and educate the client so they can make an informed decision. Again, that's another analogy to healthcare. A lot of patients come in with more informed about their diagnosis than ever before, and you're really shepherding them to a decision. In the same way, that's kind of our role with our insureds, help and inform them and help them make educated guesses. And I think if you like that partnership opportunity, it's a very rewarding industry to be in.
Well, thanks so much, Jacob, for coming on. I know that this podcast was super enlightening and interesting, and thanks for giving us a peek under the hood into your agency. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It's been great visiting with both of you.
I got to tell you, Jacob, I never really realized all the different analogies with healthcare. Like, to be quite honest with you, I just never thought about it before now. So I appreciate you doing that, because 100% agree with all of the ones that you put out there. And I think it's a really cool way of looking at the industry without question.
If someone who's listening wants to reach out and contact you about any of the things we've chatted about today, how can they do that?
Email is probably going to be best. And my email is a bit of a mouthful, so let me spell it out for you. It's Jacob, so Jacob at weinsureforyou.com. Now let me spell that out. It's WEINSURE, the number 4, YOU.com. That sounds like an infomercial there at the end.
Caller number 5 gets a 50% discount on their next home rate.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Email now while supplies last.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jacob, for coming on. I can't wait to see you really soon. Okay.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.